Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to AdAge's new show, The CMO Lounge. And I'm your host, Gulshan Verma. The role of the CMO is getting much more complex and much more difficult, with multiple platforms and multiple opportunities to engage with the customer as it goes on. Our guest for today is Mr. Siddharth Banerjee, EVP Marketing at Vodafone. He has spent more than 18 years working across sales and marketing in multiple countries, across FMCG, consumer products, and now telecommunications. He's also a National Talent Scholar and a recipient of the Chevening Rolls-Royce Award at Oxford. We'll get to your stint with Vodafone in a while, but before you joined, you started off on working with HUL and both Unilever, almost 13 years, or more than 13 years, across not only India, Sri Lanka, but also the UK and other parts of the world right now. I mean, how is it marketing within the same company to different kind of countries? I mean, different audiences. What is that like, different consumer sets?
So overall, the Unilever experience gave me a fascinating exposure into the world of brands, many different categories, different countries and cultures, and therefore enabled me to shape up as a complete marketer with the foundation of sales at one end and with the inbuilt understanding of cultures and marketing acumen built over different categories and different countries.
Okay. One of the things we always think about is, how do sales and marketing work together? And I'm from a sales background, you're from a marketing background, and there's always that kind of creative tension. You've done both as well. You start off in sales and you move to marketing right now. I mean, how does that help you as a marketing leader when you think about what you have to do working with your sales or P&L counterparts?
I think my own personal point of view is that nothing really builds your consumer understanding than getting down to the ground and actually executing stuff for yourself on the ground. It's an irreplaceable part of a business person's education to have that sales exposure at the early start of one's career. I was also fortunate to have done sales in some of the toughest states of India. And I think that has made me future fit and future ready for life.
One of the things you talked to me about previously was like the great advice you've been given about when you at the early stage of your career of how to work with customers, how to communicate with them, how to market. Can you share some of that with our audience here?
The best advice, for example, that I got from my boss early on in my career at Unilever was that never ask for permission, beg for forgiveness if you need to. And I think that kind of appealed to the bias for action person that I am. I'd rather get something done fast, cutting through the bureaucracy, cutting through the red tape. And I think that kind of little bit of a tip helped helped in terms of taking fast decisions. I think the best piece of advice that I received from a colleague was about situations where there are so many things happening, multiple priorities, competition, acting fast and fierce, and you needing to juggle so many different balls. And I think the best advice that I got in those times was to land one plane at one time. The third piece, which is less of an advice and more of something that we as business people and marketers need to live day in and day out, is never to lose touch with the consumer. When I recently went on a rural market visit along with Google, we went to this village about 2 hours outside of Pune. And what was interesting was to note that there were women who were using Lifebuoy as a symbol to mark out a YouTube icon. So imagine if you're on your phone, they might not be able to say YouTube, but they said Lifebuoy ki tikya. That little bit of nugget reinforces the fact that sometimes visual imagery can really cut through everything else in communication. And that little bit of insight, that nugget, is just not possible to glean if you're sitting in an air-conditioned office rather than actually being there
looking
on
at
the
reports.
Ground. Absolutely.
What is the business challenge that you're facing, that you see Vodafone facing, and then what is your marketing kind of plan against that?
Yeah, sure. So let's look at it from a lens of customers, competition, and category. And I think telecom in India is in the middle of a change on all these three lenses, the customer, the category, and competition. So let's look at customers. Today we're moving into an era where customers in India want speeds that are at par with the rest of the world.
Yep.
We're moving from 2G to 4G, and so therefore the pace of data usage has accelerated tremendously.
Exactly.
There's of course competition. Telecom was always very, very competitive. You can now say that it's become even more or hyper competitive.
Yep.
Probably the scale and the likes that we've not seen in recent times. And that's leading to a lot of actions that we ourselves are taking in order to be both powerfully relevant as well as most loved with our customers.
Sure.
And the third part is the category. Now this category is changing beyond only basic mobility, the basic demands for voice and data, and it's getting more and more as telecom being the layer of connectivity.
Yeah. And if you compare, I mean, you have a privileged position in the sense that you're also part of a wider multinational. And so you get to compare what's happening in India with, let's say, other parts of Asia or Europe. Much more competitive, less competitive? What do you think?
I think this is by far the most competitive telecom market in the world, both on account of telecom pricing at the one part, and the sheer number of innovation, the pace at which stuff is happening over here.
Now there's a big buzzword around branded content. Brands are becoming publishers. They're engaging with their own audience in their own way, on their own terms. How do you think about branded content and where does it fit in for you?
You know, the long kind of answer to branded content is that we now, besides our TV commercials, besides some of the exciting stuff that we do on digital platforms, we also create different kinds of stories which are in a way branded content, where we are able to weave in the message with the way that consumers want to hear stories today. And a great example of that is in recent times around Children's Day, when we collaborated with an agency partner and created something called #GiftAStory, which was essentially about the fact that in today's day and age, especially in the big cities, there are children who want to hear stories from their grandmoms and their granddads, but they are living with their parents. Parents are probably both working. And here you have, you know, these millions of children without granddads to tell them a story every night. And on the other hand, there are so many grandparents in old age homes, back in their own cities, the smaller towns of India, when their sons and their daughters have moved to the metro towns, who are actually sitting there as a repository of stories, but they have nobody to tell those stories to. And we said that how can technology
marry the two together?
And therefore really enable this telling of the story by the grandparent to this child who wants to hear a story. And as you know, storytelling stirs the imagination and really, really, in a way, increases the empathy and the amount of processing power in your brain. So therefore, there's a kind of a benefit to storytelling.
We hear a lot about how advertising is dead, partly because of technology and partly because, you know, as you said, the average attention span may be less than 7 seconds, which is less than that of a goldfish. Okay. How do you think about advertising, and is it dead or is it just evolving?
I think that's a question often raised in today's days and times. But if I were to hark back to the origins of advertising and why advertising exists, very simply, so it exists for the exchange of relevant information among human beings. And as long as that information is relevant and useful to human beings, I think advertising will exist. The nature of it, of course, might change. And it is changing.
Thank you for your time, Siddharth. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure talking
nice
to you.
Meeting you. Thank you so much.